I wanted to take you back, first of all, to 1983. In 1983, the museum hosted treasures from the Shanghai Museum, 6,000 Years of Art. This was one of the first big shows that I did, and I can remember just being overwhelmed by the sheer beauty. It was primarily bronzes and ceramics. There were some paintings. More recently, you'll probably all remember Between the Thunder and the Rain. These were paintings that roughly coincide with the period that this new exhibition is going to be about, roughly 1850 to the present. The new issue of Orientations is very, very well positioned to talk about the show. Virtually the whole issue, till you get to the last article, is about the show. And it's, I found it very helpful for this particular talk. It's the January-February Orientations issue, and you can get it in the shop. The catalog I have not yet seen. I've been working from a disc. But the catalog will be $37.50 paperback and $49 hardback, so it's very reasonable. And the show was created really here by Michael Knight, Donnie Chan, and He, working with Nancy Berliner from the Peabody Essex Museum and with a number of Shanghai museums. This is the new flyer. It's telling us that it's from February the 12th to September 5th. Now, one of the most interesting things about the show is its timing. The show is timed to coincide with the Shanghai World Expo, which will begin May the 1st and extend through October 31st. And so there are going to be a number of activities here that will relate to the expo. And I think if you have some plans to be in the Far East, you might want to go to the expo when you can. There will also be a symposium at UC Berkeley, March, I believe it's 5th and 6th. And so most of us are going to want to go to that, I would think. Shanghai is very well located for becoming the global city that it has. It's on, of course, a wonderful port location, and it opens to the Yangtze River Basin. There were 3 Shanghais after 1850. The first was the South Town, which was the home of trade. Then there was the International Settlement and the French Connection, which included a Western colonial settlement after 1840. The area called the Bund was British and American. And thirdly, there's a post-socialist modern city. What we're looking at here is a picture of, it's a gouache poster, 1932, Nanjing Road, basically the department store center of Shanghai. These are ladies of the evening, but in the daytime they have time to use their binoculars, and they are looking through those binoculars at Trinity Church. This is about 1890. I would like to think that rather than seeing Trinity Church, this is what they're seeing. This is 1930. This is called Moonlight Along the Wangpo River, and it's basically a pinup. I have been trying to see, and have not been able, what this is. Oops. That's some kind of a very large vessel. I don't know whether it's a tanker or a warship or what, but I think it's very interesting that it should be in this particular poster. I'd like also to think, what would the ladies think if they looked through their binoculars and they saw this spectacular? This is actually a woodblock print using oil and watercolor by Shen Rujian, done in 1955. Extremely striking. This is the boundary, a plaque marking the American settlement in 1850. Apparently this is about 3 feet, I guess in height, and it's made out of apparently either lead or bronze. I wasn't able to ascertain which. This is what is called a China trade painting. This is 1862. And this is showing, with the bund along the back horizon, various ships which are both Western and Chinese. And the catalog tells us that covered ships, such as this one, are in fact opium ships. This is 1857. This is the House of Dent, Beale, etc. Dent, Beale were British traders. What I want you to notice is right here. Again, this would be in the Bund area. These are palanquins, and people are being carried in them. I'm spending very little time in this talk to talk about traditional Chinese painting, but there will be a number of very, very important pictures in the show. I've just chosen to spend my time with other things. There are 190 objects in the show, and so you have to be selective in a presentation like this. This is by Ren Yi. Ren Yi was represented in that thunder, between the thunder and the rain, thank you, between the thunder and the rain exhibit. And this is a painting that he did in 1877 for his patron, whose name was Feng Zhenshan. Feng was on his way to Japan, and for some reason he wanted to have a picture painted before he left. And so there were 4 people whose colophons are at the top, and basically they're talking about what a wonderful man he is and how they're going to miss him when he's gone. In this painting, Ren Yi has depicted him as being a Confucian scholar seated outside by a stream reading a book. Now, this is very, very interesting. 2 different hand scrolls were made by 2 different painters. One painter was selected only to do the face, and the other painter did everything else. And this is the famous collector, Dachung, who is pictured in front of a screen with his bronze collection. Jay Shu writes in the Orientations article that, in fact, we have one of his bronzes in our collection now. My question is, was the export silver being made at this time in Shanghai something that Wu Dachung would have collected? My guess is no, but I don't really know that. This is a coffee pot, clearly made for a Western market. At this time, it was profitable to bring raw silver from the Americas into Shanghai, have the work done there, and then shipped it back to Europe for sale. Oops. This is the spout. This is a dragon spout. There are several pieces of silver in the show. Now, you remember the drawings that we saw of the ladies. A gentleman painted 100 beauties of Shanghai in the period in the 1890s. And this is an example of one of those paintings. I'm calling this entire section of my talk Women as the Agents of Change. And this is a wonderful introduction. Notice the women's feet. You cannot see them. That is because they have bound feet, and yet they have learned to operate a treadle sewing machine. And you can tell by the stack of clothing on the table that they're quite good at working with it. To show you how cosmopolitan Shanghai was at the time, these women are seated inside, and on the right, up high, is this Punka, which is a fan from India made of cheesecloth and bamboo. It's being operated by the young woman over on the left. If you look back on the wall, you see a painting of a Western woman. Now, this is quite a story. These ladies are eating out. They've gone to a Western restaurant. They are in one of 30 rooms devoted to the upper class Chinese clientele. They have brought their servants with them from home. Notice the clock, notice the chandelier, notice the furniture, all Western. Apparently they could eat steak, they could have champagne. I'm not really clear what's happening right here, but it looks as though the servant is holding a bottle with a straw. Six years before this particular painting, a relative, perhaps the father of Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, whose name was Sir Neville Chamberlain, invented the game of snooker, and he did so in London. And 6 years later, here we have Chinese ladies who've gone to the public park, the Zhang Public Park, and they are playing snooker. Now, these ladies are obviously in Western dress. They are on the left side of a what appears to be a Chinese deck, but the chairs are, of course, Western. The protege of the painter who did the original brush and ink paintings has painted both the binoculars that we first saw and this one. And it's believed that he lifted these women out of a Western painting and just gave them Chinese faces. This is a qipao from 1920. It's lined with camel's hair felt. And this is one from the 1930s. It's silk and cut velvet. It's supposed to have felt influence from Japan. There are a number of textiles in the show. Shanghai was the home of so-called calendar art, and the 30s was a prime time for it. Here she's showing us something, but not too much. This is a woodcut. Woodcuts were the medium of the 1930s. And this is by a well-known woodcut artist whose name was Lai Sao Gray. Clearly this is not a Chinese figure. The title is Youth. This is by Lin Fengmian, who also had paintings in the Thunder and Rain show. He studied in Paris, he studied in Dijon, he specialized in women. And this is very interesting. This is called Beauty with a Bronze Mirror. And the question is, why a bronze mirror? And why do we have this very large, disproportionately large vase over on the left? Of course, the image that society hoped to achieve was a more wholesome one. And here we have a poster of the woman bathing her child at home. Well, probably most of you are going to know who this is. This is Shirley Temple. And Shirley Temple has got a bowl of cherries in front of her, but she's also got a cherry draped over her ear to sort of give you the idea that she's wearing an earring. This is the cover of a movie magazine, woman very demure. And this is just fascinating. You have to look at this kind of closely. This is the interior of a movie studio. Shanghai was the center of movie making. Half of all movies made in the 30s and I think early 40s in China were being made in Shanghai. So we're inside the studio, and at the back they are filming a scene of people eating out at a fashionable restaurant. But who are these fellows in the chicken suits? Here and here. And why are they there? All I can guess is maybe this is a Harpo Marx type production, the Groucho Marx type production. And here we have another demurely costumed movie cover. These were aimed at the middle-class woman. Now you'll recognize this from before. This is Nanjing Road. The buildings are buildings that are department stores. There were 3 department stores that were easily the equivalent of a Macy's. And inside there were both shopping and recreational options for the shopper who chose to come. I do not know why we have the airplanes in the sky, but I thought they made it a very interesting slide. So this is called Nanjing Road, and it's dated to 1932. This is 1941. I think that this is a Rolls Royce. But if it isn't, it's something approximately like a Rolls Royce. And what I want you to notice is the juxtaposition of the car, the fellow on the bicycle who's just about to be run over, and the rickshaw back here. Everything was happening in Shanghai. And this is the Texaco station where the Rolls Royce could have been serviced. And this is the racetrack and a well-dressed group of bettors have stepped out after the race. And over here we have the horse and the jockey, and I assume those are the owners in front here. This is a commercial building. The bottom floor is retail, and then the upper three are apartments. Now, would you think that this is a police station? This is a police station, 1941. This is the influence of the Bauhaus. And the policemen were largely Sikh from India. And Shanghai at this time was extraordinarily cosmopolitan. A large Muslim population, and based on their original Jewish population, which was large, they got 30,000 more who were fleeing from Hitler, who came in the course of the late 30s and early 40s. And this was built by Vidal Sassoon. Vidal Sassoon, one of the members of the traditional Jewish families. There were three major families, and his was one of them. And he built this in 1934, and it's called the Broadway Mansion's apartment building. 19 stories, and I'm going to show you furniture that might have belonged in the Broadway Mansions. This is, the wood is hongmu. It's like a rosewood, and this is going to be a bedroom set. Very Shanghai Art Deco. These chairs are rosewood, and they have the original fabric on them, which is just remarkable. Clearly someone has taken very good care of them. This is a small carpet. I think it's small. I'm not really sure. We'll find out when the show comes. And the design on it is very traditional. It's yin-yang. But look at this one. The design on this one is supposed to represent an abstract crested bird. There are a number of carpets in the show. In 1941, one of the major painters, John Leung, was in exile because the Japanese had taken over Shanghai. And he painted what he remembered of the wharf. And on the right-hand side, you see the buildings of the Bund. The ink and colors on paper work on the left shows us the work going on at the shipyards. The one on the right is by the same artist who did the sunset that I showed at the beginning, and it's titled During the Great Leap Forward. Now, the same artist, John Leung, has painted this bridge. It seems that the Shanghai Expo was going to include the first pedestrian bridge over the Huangpu River, and they spoke with and got design from a French firm who made a quite ornate bridge plan. But I guess the funding didn't happen because the Financial Times has reported that the bridge has not been built. Now we go into a series of political woodcuts. Two of these are 1935, one is 1947. You'll want to notice in this one the juxtaposition of the tall buildings and the abandoned baby. And here we have the bum in the gutter being ignored by the well-dressed couple. And the next two are 1935, and they're very, very, they speak for themselves. You don't have to say anything to know what's being done here. This one is called Ruhr, China, and it's by an artist named Li Hua. But it could be international. He doesn't have to be Chinese. And this is by Li Huayi, and you will recognize it from our 2004 show of his works. This is called Forest. Li Huayi had the ill fortune of growing up in the Shanghai of Mao. And he was put to work taking posters like this one and painting them on large expanses of wall so as to instruct the multitudes. And this particular poster is called Waves of Anti-American Imperialism Along the Bund. And one of the interesting things that you'll see here are these three people on the large billboard. We have a Chinese man, a Caucasian woman, and a black man. And then in front, we have some kind of a pantomime. This is another politically oriented speech, obviously at the Shipyards. Edgar Snow wrote in 1960 that the richest and most colorful city in the Orient was no more. But I think he was wrong, and I'm going to prove it to you with the next few slides. This is one of several very large installations that will take place here at the museum. This is called something about homage to Xu Beihong. Xu Beihong was one of the great early painters of the 20th century. And this is neon, pulsating neon, and it's supposed to look like brushes sweeping across silk. And it's doing this pulsating to the tune of a Chinese melody, which is repeated. This is going to, I think, be on the wall behind the store. And it's one of three slides that I will show you. The artist's name is Liu Jinhua. He worked at Jingdezhen for 8 years. He's a master of porcelain. This is a porcelain and light show called Shadow on the Water. And it's showing scenes that you think initially are of modern Shanghai. But in fact, some of these buildings come from other places, like Beijing. You get more of a feel for it by looking at this one. He began this in 2002, and it took him a number of years to do. He wants you to buy into his idea that modernity is an illusion. He also produced this. He's obviously very versatile. This is an installation of stainless steel books. There are 50 books. Each one has two different questions. inscribed on it. The question that is being answered here in 5 languages, or being asked, it's designed to make you think. The question being asked is, can Shanghai produce something more than Disney World? There are 2 video installations that I'm going to talk about. There are actually 4 in the show. This gentleman teaches at NYU, and he went home to Shanghai and was appalled to see that these old doors called shikumen, which are stone, were being destroyed. And so he thought, what can I do to show that they are passing? And he created something that he called Vestiges of a Process, Shikumen 2007. And this is what he's done. He sets up an easel, and he begins to paint a door. And then he waits to see what passers-by reaction will be. And the passers-by couldn't care less. This is a 6-minute video. It does disappear, yeah, absolutely. And this is a 14-minute video, and it is set up so that there's a boat on which we have this modern Shanghai intellectual and a woman who appears to be a peasant woman from the past. I have no idea if they talk to one another in the course of the boat ride or not. It's a 14-minute video. And that's the last slide I'm going to show you. But I wanted to read to you something that Michael Knight wrote in the catalog, in the orientations. I think that the show is important enough and interesting enough that you'll want to come multiple times to see it. Regardless of the multinational origins of the artistic influences absorbed by Shanghai's creators of visual culture, both art makers and consumers have sought and found something that is uniquely Shanghai. Even today, as it continues to assimilate international artistic and cultural trends, Shanghai stamps them with its own distinctive and instantly recognizable flavor. Thank you very much.